Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in across the continent and beyond for another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, like our speaker and so many of our classes are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And everything we do goes to our YouTube channel. So if you want to check out this program in 3 weeks or 3 years, or like 4,000 other broadcasts with the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth, you can head there and do just that. Now, today, as many of you know, because you found out about it through that, we are partnering again with our favorite folks at the World Wildlife Fund. They do such incredible work to help conserve species and habitats around the world. They are far and away the most well-known organization conserving species on this planet. And I really encourage you, check out our full playlist with them. Again, all of those are on YouTube. We've got more coming up in the new year in 2026, but welcome in for one of our very last broadcasts of 2025. Now, before I dive in with Noelle and highlight our topic of the day, I want to note we do have a Kahoot today. So between our talk and our Q&A, if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz to test your understanding and have some fun, you can pull up that game pin. So I'll put that in the chat for everybody as well. But 4 questions, a good way to keep it extra interactive and a little competitive as well. Now, without further ado, we are diving in today with Noelle from the WWF to talk amazing grasslands. I've had the great pleasure of going to the grasslands in Canada and the United States. They're some of the most special ecosystems in the world. And today we are going to learn about some keystone species, some conservation threats, some conservation successes, and so much more. So, without further ado, none of you are here for me. I'm going to zip it. I'm going to turn you over to Noelle. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, thanks so much, Jesse, for the warm welcome, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I'm super excited to talk with you all, and let's kick it off with my presentation.
Let's do it.
Okay, great. So as Jesse said, my name is Noelle, and I'm really, really happy to be here with you all today. I am here to share a little bit about some amazing wildlife species that call grasslands and prairies home. And so let's get started. So all of the things that I really liked as a kid and when I was in school have all kind of led my path to where I'm at today. I grew up in a city, but I always really loved the outdoors. So whether it was playing outside in the parks or going on family vacation camping trips or hiking trips on the weekend and going to the zoo were all things that really stuck in my mind. The other thing about me is when I was growing up, my pets were my favorite. I've always really loved animals. And so when I was in middle school, I first started volunteering at my cat, who is shown here, Cornelius Dandelion Jingle Bells Guernsey. I started volunteering at that vet. And then when I went into high school, I started working at a front desk and cleaning up surgery rooms at a different vet hospital. And I ended up working there for 5 years and really thought that that was what I was going to do with my life, was be a veterinarian. But then I went off to college and I was studying biology as an undergraduate. And I took a conservation biology class. And that class and that professor really kind of changed everything for me. It was at that time when I first started learning about what conservation biology was, and that there were people that were able to work with wildlife species in the wild and work to make sure that their habitats and their populations were doing well. So after I took that conservation biology class, that professor actually hired me for my first job, where I was studying disease dynamics with prairie dogs and other small mammals, or I like to call them schmammals. And from there, I really just started trying to get as much experience as possible in this field. So I was doing a lot of volunteering and at the same time, working at grocery stores and art stores and things like that to support myself. But then as I was building up experience, I started getting hired for part-time jobs started getting hired for temporary and seasonal jobs doing wildlife research. So I always knew that I wanted to work with mammals, but I also never turned down any opportunity to get experience. So I also worked with birds, I worked with plants, and I did a lot of different things just to give me some good experiences. After I did that for several years, I went back to graduate school, where I was lucky enough to be studying how moose in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem have big impacts on their ecosystems. So when I finished graduate school, I started working in the field of wildlife conservation. And through all of that, I have found myself now here at WWF. And it's been it's been a great honor to be able to be a senior specialist for our bison and our black-footed ferret programs. So let me share a little bit more about my work here with WWF. So I sit on our World Wildlife Fund Great Plains team. And this map here shows you that the Great Plains is this really large area that spans about 700 million acres. And this is across Native nations, Canada, the United States, and parts of Mexico. And the Great Plains program, our whole team is working to ensure that the grasslands, the wildlife, and the communities that live here are all able to thrive. So I am curious how many students are joining in from the Great Plains.
Ooh.
So enter that in.
Well, so yeah, I will note, if you ask any questions throughout the broadcast and you're on StreamYard or YouTube, please do feel free to chime in the chat. It's not just to place your questions at the end. I think we have 22 states today, and quite a few of them are in the Great Plains. So if you're on YouTube and you fit the bill, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. But Noelle, keep on going. Take us away.
Excellent. Thanks, Jesse. So one of the things I really wanted to talk about is, our work with keystone species of the Great Plains. And pictured here, you'll see two of them. On the top left, you've got the black-tailed prairie dog, and on the bottom is the plains bison. And, we call them keystone species because they play really disproportionate effects on the landscape, and it impacts a lot of other species, both vegetation and animal species. So if you look at that diagram, if you remove the keystone, it's going to have big impacts on all of the other pieces. It's important to share with you that both bison and prairie dogs have suffered really, really serious population declines. Today, we estimate that they are probably found on less than 5% of their historical range. Now, there's many reasons that have contributed to why we've seen these populations decline, and that ranges from urban development to plowing up lands for agriculture. There's also been a lot of human persecution, which means that there have been intentional efforts by people to kill these species off. And then finally, there are also some disease challenges that have been present, especially for prairie dogs. So I want you all to close your eyes and think about a coral reef. And as your eyes are closed and you're thinking about a coral reef, what are the different things that you might be seeing? You might be envisioning corals and sea turtles and fish, sharks, all kinds of crustaceans, all kinds of different life and biodiversity are found around coral reefs. Now you can go ahead and open up your eyes and think about a prairie dog colony. Prairie dog colonies are very much the coral reefs of the grasslands. And what I mean by that is there are so many other life forms that are associated and can be found with prairie dogs. And there are over 100 different species that are found with prairie dogs. So you'll see here a list of some of the animals that can be found with prairie dogs. And let's dive in a little bit about why they are so important. So first, they're the chicken nugget of the prairie. Everybody likes to eat them. And there are several species that are really, really dependent on prairie dogs, including the endangered black-footed ferret, which you see at the top right. In addition to black-footed ferret, there's many other mammal species that like to eat them, and that includes badgers and coyotes and many other species. And then there's also reptiles and birds that also dine on them. So golden eagles really like them, rattlesnakes, various kinds of hawks, including the ferruginous hawks that you see in the middle and the top left there. So they are a very important component of the food web of the grassland system. The other reason that prairie dogs are really important keystone species is that they create a lot of habitat that other species use. So there's two primary ways that they do this. If you look at that top left photo, that shows a yucca plant that has been chewed down. And prairie dogs, because everybody wants to eat them, one of the things that they do is they need to keep the vegetation clipped down low so they can watch for predators. So through their clipping and herbivory behavior, they change this landscape and make little microhabitat sites that many other species use, including birds like mountain plovers that will nest on their colonies and many others. The other thing is that they create these burrow networks. And so you'll see here, they have these long, extensive burrows that are connected together underground, and so many other species are found using those. That includes black-footed ferrets and the burrowing owl that you see here. We also see a lot of salamanders and rattlesnakes and others that are also using those burrows for their own habitat use and for raising their own young. And another really cool fact about prairie dogs is they have one of the most complex animal languages that's ever been decoded. These animals, they're a colonial animal, which means that they live in family groups that make up a territory. And then there's many of these family groups called coteries that then make up the prairie dog colony, and many prairie dog colonies create a prairie dog complex. And so these little guys are constantly vocalizing and talking with each other. They have an ability to describe what kind of predators are around. They can even talk about people. So they have been documented to be able to talk about what people look like, meaning what color are they wearing? Are they big? Are they small? Are they walking fast? Are they walking slow? And have they ever been seen with a gun? So prairie dogs have this really unique language, and many other animals can key in to those alarm calls as well. Now, moving on to this guy, the black-footed ferret. This is one of North America's most endangered mammals. And this black-footed ferret is a member of the mustelid family, which is also known as the weasel family. So believe it or not, these guys are related to otters and wolverine and other weasel species. And it is the only ferret found in North America. These guys are a nocturnal species and they only eat prairie dogs. They are quite small. They are usually 1.5 to 2.5 pounds, and they are usually 19 to 24 inches long, but that includes a 5 to 6 inch tail. So they're small but mighty. And one of the coolest things about ferrets is that we are really lucky to have them. You know, they thought that they were extinct twice. And in 1981, a ranch dog named Shep, shown there on the right, was able to find the last surviving population of black-footed ferrets in Wyoming. This population has been studied a lot. And in 1985, because researchers were seeing that there was disease present, they trapped 24 ferrets because they didn't want them all to die from disease. And this really saved the species from extinction. So with those 24 animals, they brought them into captivity and started a captive breeding program. Thankfully, these efforts were successful, and they've been successful enough that black-footed ferret kits, which is what we call their young, have been able to be reintroduced back to the wild. Today, there's still captive breeding programs that are strong and well, and this is still ongoing today. One thing that's pretty cool is, you know, for these black-footed ferrets that are born in captivity, they have to go through something that we call preconditioning or boot camp to show that they will be able to survive on their own in the wild. And so what this means is that basically mothers are the ones that teach their ferret kits how to hunt. And so they're let out to be able to do that in these small enclosures. And the ferret kits have to demonstrate that they can successfully hunt prairie dogs before they are released into the wild. So a hard boot camp, but a very important step to it. Today, we are lucky enough that this animal went from being thought to be extinct to having about 500 individuals in the wild, and there's about 300 individuals in captivity. So we are really, really fortunate to have them. This is a video of a ferret that was released at the Crow Nation in Montana. But today, you know, there's still a lot of work to do because we have we need to have 3,000 breeding adults to have them recovered off the endangered species list. So I hope that you all will join me with caring about this important species. Finally, I am going to talk about bison. And a quick question for everyone in the chat is, what is another name that this animal is often called?
Ooh, I will say, whenever we do programs in this guy, we get more people thinking that it's the other thing than this. Bison's usually the one that we need to tell people about. So if you're on StreamYard, on YouTube, and you want to chime in with what you think it is, yes, we've got buffalo, a few people calling buffalo. Very good. Noelle, they nailed it. Way to go.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Bison are also commonly called buffalo. And this animal is really, really important and another keystone species. These guys were named the national mammal in 2016. And that's really because of their deep significance to many native nations and indigenous peoples to the continent. And then also because they've really been a symbol of America, and they have been a great conservation success story. I also think the role that they play as a keystone species is also another reason why they are worthy of this national mammal designation. So one of the reasons they are so important to grassland systems is because of their grazing behavior. Bison, they constantly are grazing on the move, and through their grazing patterns and their selection, they really help shape different plant communities and increase biodiversity of vegetation species. The other thing is with their big hooves, as they're always on the move, their hoof action helps aerate the soil and helps plant seeds to also increase that biodiversity. Another thing that's really important is in the winter, these bison have these massive heads and these huge shoulder muscles, and that allows them to plow their way through deep snow to access different grass and vegetation. Other smaller animals like pronghorn in the winter are not able to do that. And so they will be able to benefit by following bison and accessing some of that critical forage that is really important during those harsh winter seasons. The other thing that bison do is they create these wallows on the landscape. So here's a picture of one, and the way that these are created is bison are often pawing and rolling for dust baths, and that is to control insects and to remove old winter fur. They also use it in the breeding season because, believe it or not, male bison will urinate in these wallows, roll around in them, and that is considered bison cologne for those bison females. These wallows help retain water and create temporary ponds for other species like birds and amphibians will often use them. There's also a lot of biodiversity in terms of different plants that are found in these areas. And this picture is of people studying what pollinators are using these buffalo wallows. And then finally, the last way that they're a big keystone is, bison are leaving a lot of things behind into the ecosystem. On the left, there is a picture of bison fur, and many birds will use bison fur to line their nests, keep their eggs warm and their chicks warm, but also it helps camouflage them from detection from predators. And the other thing that bison leave a lot of is waste, right? So they're making urine and fecal depositions into the ecosystem, which helps for fertilizer. And finally, when they die, their carcasses create these nutrient hotspots in the system. So I just wanted to thank you again for listening and learning a little bit more about prairie dogs, bison, and black-footed ferrets. They're all species that I think are really, really amazing and important, and they also need a lot of help. So I would encourage you all to learn as much as you can about wildlife species that are in your area and in the Great Plains, and share that information out with your loved ones. And the last thing I would say is, when I was in school, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do other than I did think I'd be a vet and work with animals. But one thing I've learned in the conservation field is that there are so many different kinds of jobs. So if people really like science or technology, there's tons of advancements being done with drones and AI. There's people that are building amazing maps. If you love to talk with people, there's so many jobs in conservation that really require people. And then there's lots of storytellers and people that are using social media to get the word out. So I guess I would just encourage you all to think about the things that interest you and your skills, and know that there's definitely homes for you in conservation.
Ah, no better message than that. Thank you so much, Noelle. And if you want to come out of screen share so you can see us again, have a bit of a conversation, I'll just add too, business people, lawyers, like someone like the WWF is a huge organization with thousands of employees around the world. So this is true of space exploration. This is true of deep sea exploration. This is true of conservation. Like if you're keen on one of these topics, but you might have a different skill set or something that you're particularly passionate about in an education context, there are certainly jobs for you. And it's been such a thrill to get to feature so many of those kinds of jobs over the year here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Now we're going to dive in with our Kahoot first, see who is paying attention, have a little bit of fun, test some understanding. And Noelle, what they win, if they win, is your and I's everlasting respect. So if you want to help us out with little hints along the way, you are welcome to guide us in the right direction. We've got 45 of you in right now. That's awesome. If you just want to yell out the answers in your class, that's cool too. And then we are going to dive in with Q&A after that. There's already a bunch on YouTube, and we'll be coming to all our live classes live as well. But let's get underway. Drum roll, please, with question number 1. All right, in 3, 2, and 1. Here we go. All right, question 1. The Great Plains extend through how many countries? There was a map Noelle showed at the beginning. Now, we talked about the United States, a lot of Great Plains there. We've got some people coming in from Canada today. Maybe you might recognize the Great Plains there as well. So the question is it 1, 2, 3, or 4 countries? Who was paying attention to that map? This is a bit of a tricky one. I must say, I would have gotten this wrong before your map at the beginning of this broadcast. Most of you got this right. I genuinely, I don't know why, I didn't know that the Great Plains extended into Mexico. But fascinating to see it shown out that way. So for most of you, you nailed this. Harmonic tiger takes our lead. All right, question 2. This is a multi-select. There's more than one right answer here. Which 2 of these species were listed as keystone species? Noelle, you had a great slide with 2 pictures. Were burrowing owl, prairie dog, bison, or swift fox. 2 of these are keystone species. There's another one we featured a lot, but is not on the slide. What do we think? One of them's in the picture. That could be a big hint for you. All right, 46 answers in. Get them in. 1 more second. Yes, prairie dog and bison. You nailed that one. I figured you'd get that one. Cool. Harmonic tiger keeps our lead. Amiable axolotl a second. 3rd question. The ferret boot camp is called what? Wild school, preconditioning, prairie training, or hunt practice. It might involve hunt practice, but Noelle, I don't know. It's our sciencey term of the day for our audience. And I love your questions on YouTube, everybody. You guys are amazing. Cool. All right. Our Indian school in Washington, we're coming to you first. We're going to try your audio, but we're going to do in the chat if we can't get your audio working. Preconditioning is correct. Way to go. Does that change your leaderboard? Harmonic tiger winning big time. Might be going wire to wire. Way to go. Okay. About how many total black-footed ferrets are there? 8, 80, 800, or 8,000? Who is paying attention? There's quite a few in the wild. There's quite a few in captivity. I grew up at Toronto, and they had quite a few at the Toronto Zoo. They were a big institution involved in putting them back in the wild. So I always love when we get to talk black-footed ferrets. Let's see. 63 of you in. All right. 2 more seconds. The answer is 800. Most of you nailed this one. This has been a fun Kahoot. You guys killed it. All right. 3rd place, quick hair. 2nd place, by a little bit mesmerizing goose. And first, for all the marbles, I think it's probably a wire-to-wire winner. Is it Levy? Wise cat. Oh, it's thrown off at the end. Oh, way to go. If you are a wise cat, let us know who you are in the chat. Our Indian school friends, we're going to check your audio first and see if you have a question for us. And if not, I'll give our YouTube audience just a second to play around with that. And you can always type in the private chat as well. Let's see. Does the audio want to work? No? No. Yell into the void. Scream, and you might make it all the way to Montana where Noelle is. Okay, right in the chat. We'll come to you guys in a sec. BHS, Cascade, we're coming to you guys in a second. La Vie, Mrs. Fisher's class, lots of stuff. But Noelle, I'll start with one on YouTube. Theodore in Miss Ryder's class wants to know, how big do bison wallows get?
Hi, Theodore. Thanks for the question. I've seen a lot of different sized ones. Many of the bison will reuse the same ones, and you'll have many individuals all key on one as well. So sometimes you'll see small depressions, and you will see some pretty massive ones that have been worked on over the years. You can often see landscapes where you can kind of, if you imagine you're in a drone or in an airplane, that you can see these kind of pockets all throughout the prairie where bison are. And that is really important because, again, that they create those little micro habitat sites within the grasslands.
Sweet.
So from small to big.
Yeah, thanks, Noelle, and great question, Theodore. All right, BHS, we're going to see if we can hear you guys through the ether. Hello. Maybe.
Hello.
Hello, welcome in.
All right, go ahead.
If you could work in/on another biome of your choice, what would it be?
What a cool question.
Ooh, that is a really good question. To be honest, I really am pretty fascinated with most systems. I will say, though, that I'm not a heat person. So I think if I was going to work with another species, I really like puffins.
We just had a puffin program not too long ago, and they are delightful. So that's a good plug of the day. I will say, having talked to a lot of biologists, when people go to like the poles, like when they go really far north or far south, they tend to go back again and again and again. And a lot of people, when they go to like a rainforest, are like, that's it. I went once. I'm done. Never again. That's a pretty consistent thing. So I'm glad we got that question. Thanks, guys. All right, Cascade Middle School. Come on in Indiana. Unmute your mic and take us away, guys. Hey.
Hi, my name is Zeke. I was wondering, could they just bring back the black-footed ferret like they're doing to the woolly mammoth?
Yeah. Ooh, like a de-extinction thing. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit.
Well, we are so fortunate that, we really could have lost black-footed ferrets. So I think it's an immense opportunity, the fact that thank goodness for Shep, right, the dog, to give us the chance to keep working with this live and present population. I will say, though, that there are some really cool genetic technology things that are being done that are trying to look at how could you increase the genetic diversity of the populations, because, again, they were limited down to such a small number of surviving animals.
Yeah. And I really want to harp on this for just a quick second, because we hear this a lot in our conservation broadcast. Like, oh, if it goes extinct, can't we bring it back? Our chances of ever really doing that are extremely low. It makes a lot of news because it's very flashy and there's a lot of money in de-extinction right now. But if you ask any conservation biologist in the world, they will tell you the science behind that is iffy at best. And it's way, way more economical and better to save species while they're alive and to save them while they're abundant rather than trying to save the last 2 or 3 of something. Black-footed ferrets is a really great success story of something that we've got back from really, really low numbers to a pretty hopefully getting towards stable ecosystem. But it's really, really important for all our students of all ages to know it's way better to save things in the wild when they're alive. Very, very important and better for all involved. So thanks for that question, guys. All right, North Topsail Beach, Lavi, come on in and take us away. Hey.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Good.
So good, thank you.
Yes, so I have a few questions. My first question is, how large can the prairie dog colonies get?
Ooh.
Yeah, so prairie dog colonies, historically they were massive. Some people talk about, like in Texas, being able to walk for days through prairie dog colonies. Today, they're much smaller. As I've mentioned, there's several reasons why we've seen a lot of population declines. But as a minimum, for black-footed ferrets, for a population, we're talking they probably need somewhere around 3,000 acres of prairie dog colonies. And it's important to share, that ferrets can move. And so those complexes are made of different colonies that are all within distance enough that those ferrets can travel back and forth.
It's a really, really good point. And true in all conservation, by the way. So habitat loss is probably the biggest threat to most wildlife on this planet. And when we give animals that space to come back, they tend to. So it's really, really important that as we bring things back to the wild and we release them, that we're also preserving those habitats. This is something we hear about all the time, both in our WWF series and exploring by the seat of your pants more broadly. So these are great questions, guys. All right, Mrs. Fisher's class, I'm coming to you. I'll share our one from our Wahilut school, and then we'll take some from YouTube, and we'll do a whole second round because, Noelle, you are an epically fast Q&A answerer, and we love it. Hello, Mrs. Fisher. Come on in. Hey.
I have a question. Why don't basins take baths in water?
Ooh,
That's a good question. Thank you. I do see bison swimming. Bison are good at swimming. I'm pretty close to Yellowstone National Park and used to do some work there as well. And you will see bison swimming some of those big rivers like the Yellowstone River. But in terms of the wallows that they create, they really are doing that, in soil. So they're digging it up and using their horns and their hooves and their bodies to create those wallows on land.
And I mean, it just looks like a lot of fun. If I could do a wallow and get away with it, I certainly would. I think society does not allow me to do that just yet, but we'll talk about that at the end of the broadcast. All right, Arwahilat Indian School, welcome in, guys. Great first question. So hello to all of you. And then how hard was it to repopulate the black-footed ferrets, Noelle?
I would say that we are fortunate that there are so many amazing and very smart and talented people that have been working at this for a really long time. I'm not going to lie to you, though. The black-footed ferrets, they need a lot of help. They are a conservation-dependent species. And what I mean by that is they really need people to be helping and giving a helping hand. So I think that there's a lot of promise and opportunity because we have seen black-footed ferret populations reestablished in the wild. But like I said, we have a long way to go before they can be removed from the endangered species list. And so I think, we've got some challenges and some immense opportunities. So the more people that are interested, the better their fate will be.
When I was a kid, sea turtles were a cause of big concern all around the world, and they certainly still are. We had Disney Conservation on the other day talking about green sea turtles getting delisted off the endangered species list. So there are many examples of the green list where we literally had an animal that was on death's door and close to extinction, and we've, through conservation efforts, have helped bring it back. So I really want to stress there's lots of hope in conservation. When we leave animals room, when we give them that support, they can come back in big numbers. So many questions on YouTube, more than we could take in 10 broadcasts, which is a great problem to have. I'm going to take a few from there, and then we're going to go back to our live friends. Miss Riddle's class in Nova Scotia wants to know, are there other species of prairie dog in North America?
That's a great question. So there are actually 5 species of prairie dogs. So black-tailed prairie dogs, which is the one that I talked about the most, has the largest range, but there are also white-tailed prairie dog, Gunnison's prairie dog, Mexican prairie dog, and Utah prairie dog. And I should note that they all have had very serious declines.
Yep. I did not know that. Thank you for stumping me in a live broadcast. That doesn't happen very often, Noelle. Elena's our chief questioner on YouTube for the entire year so far. She's in grade 2, and she wants to know, how long are bison horns?
Whew. Elena, that's a great question, and I don't know in terms of dimensions. One thing I will say, though, is that especially with male bison, you can tell the older bulls because through their kind of rubbing behaviors that they do to create those wallows and brooming against trees and fences and that kind of thing, you can note when a bull is older because he gets this little ridge on those horns that you can see. The other quick thing I'll say about horns is you can use the horns, even for young bison, to tell if they are female or male, because the males tend to go more up and the females tend to curve in a little bit more and they're thinner.
Really interesting. Thank you for that. I didn't know that either. Man, this is half the joy of these broadcasts. I know it's for you as kids, but like I get to learn something every time. I've got some popcorn under the table. I'm just eating, getting to learn from people like Noelle. It's such a thrill. All right. We're heading back for some live classes. We're going to take one from everybody, a few more from our YouTube friends, and we'll wrap up after that. Arwahilat Indian School. Hello again, guys. And the antlers are at the back now. They had a cool one. How many prairie dogs are in the U.S.? We highlighted black-footed ferret numbers. Do we have a sense of how many prairie dogs there are?
We don't have an estimate of the number of individual prairie dogs. One of the main ways that scientists and researchers quantify prairie dogs is by mapping their colonies and looking at what the acreage is. But as you go through North America, there's different amounts of precipitation and the densities, meaning how many numbers of prairie dogs on an acre really can vary. So I wish I had a good answer for that, but nobody knows.
Yes, we stumped the scientists. This is one of the joys of broadcast, and it's truly like, we don't really know how many blue whales there are, and they're the biggest animal ever to exist on planet Earth. It is shockingly difficult to get really good population estimates for things that are either really small or in the ocean. So this is a common question we get in a lot of programs, and the answer is often that we don't know. So thank you very much for passing this along. All right, a BHS, a welcome in Illinois. Come on in and take us away again. Hey, high schoolers.
What was the hardest challenge you had to go through while working in the grassland?
Awesome question.
The hardest part of working in the grasslands. That's a really great question. I mean, I definitely would say that when you're out in the field, one thing about the plains and the prairies is that you can have some pretty extreme weather events. So, you definitely can be out there and have great weather and then 2 seconds later be hammered by a windstorm or, I do remember one time being out on the prairie and looking around and noticing everyone's hair was standing straight up. And we all evacuated because we knew that there was a big lightning storm on the way. So I'd say weather can be pretty challenging, but lots of layers.
My one time camping out in Saskatchewan in Grasslands National Park, the wind was so heavy that I had to abandon my tent, pack it up in the car, and sleep sitting up in the passenger seat because there was no capacity to go to sleep in that sort of wind. So there you are. Lavi, come on back in North Topsail Beach. Take us away. Hey.
Hi. So my second question was, how do researchers find out the prairie dog's complex language?
Oh, cool question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's one researcher, and I apologize if I mispronounce his name, but his name is Kon Shlobotikov, and he has done a lot of research into different animal languages and behaviors. And one of the ways that I know that they were working to decode it is they really, I mentioned that prairie dogs are the chicken nugget of the prairie, and so they really were testing with like taxidermied badgers and other kinds of prey and recording what those vocalizations from the prairie dogs were, and then being able to analyze those vocalizations to detect out the different alarm calls that they were making for these different things, different words.
My very favorite topic. This is a bit of an adult book for kids, but An Immense World by Ed Yong is an amazing look at how animals communicate and some other deep dives into some animal senses on this planet. So I encourage you to check that out when you're a little bit older. We did do a program on whale communication once, which is also amazing. We are just really scratching the surface of this as a topic in the world, and it's such exciting science. So thank you so much for that, Lavi. I'm going to take a quick one from YouTube, and then we'll wrap up with Mrs. Fisher's class live in a second. Everett in Ms. Rader's class wants to know, what's your favorite animal you've ever worked with? No pressure.
Ooh, that is a lot of pressure. Besides prairie dogs, black-footed ferret, and bison, I would say that, I really, every species I've worked with, I've really enjoyed. Shira's moose, or the subspecies of moose I worked with, were really neat. Mule deer are really amazing. Mountain lions are amazing. I will say, as a zookeeper, the two species that I really connected with the most were the black rhino and the orangutan, both species that are amazing and have a lot of opportunities for conservation.
Yeah. What a nice answer. Thank you so much for the deep dive into some of the background in the career. I will also note, Chicken Nugget of the Prairies is what we're going to title this program next time to get an even bigger audience than 800 kids, because it's totally awesome. So thank you for that in my day.
And I can't claim that. Many others have said that, but it is a good description.
It's a great description. Mrs. Fisher's class, Carsonville, we're going to wrap up with you guys. I want to note, too, if you want to check out the rest of our WWF series in the past, upcoming, you can check that out. It's going to be on our YouTube channel. And if you want to see more about the amazing work they do to save all species, worldwildlife.org is your one-stop shop. But Mrs. Fisher, come on in and take us away with one final question. Hey.
I have a question. Do you need to go to college to work with animals?
Ooh.
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of different jobs out there that allow you to work with animals. I will say, for being, a wildlife ecologist, it was important for me to go to college. But I think equally important was getting experience, first by volunteering and then doing jobs to figure out what it is that you like, what is it that you want to do, and then being able to kind of hone in and build your skill set to help serve those animals that you want to help conserve.
It's a beautiful answer. And I will say, so when I was out of high school, before I went to university, I was applying for jobs with animals, volunteering at the Toronto Zoo, working with the Toronto Humane Society, all of which I could do with just a high school education. So there are jobs available. If you want to be a doctor, if you want to be someone who's like a high-level conservationist, you usually do need to go to college or university in some fashion. But as Noelle, as you mentioned at the end of the broadcast, there are so many other avenues to get involved with a group like the WWF. So if you're keen on this, there are many ways to get your foot in the door. Time flies and you're having fun. We're nearing the end of the broadcast. Is there any final message you want to leave us with before we bring in our classes to say a big thank you and farewell?
I would just say, there's amazing ecosystems and wildlife wherever you live. So I would encourage you to explore where you live. And then, if you don't live in the Great Plains, please make sure to make a visit sometime, because I think it's often overlooked. And just thank you, and hope everyone has happy holidays and a happy new year.
Very, very nice. I'm on my first plane out of here to come out to you in the West. So I hope our kids take the opportunity as well. It's a really special part of the world. And as we do to wrap up every broadcast, what we're going to do is bring in our live groups to say a big thank you and farewell. If you're at home on YouTube too, and you want to scream and yell and annoy the principal, you have our permission on behalf of me and WWF. Take that to the bank. So we'll bring in everyone. We are at Indian School. La vie, Mrs. Fisher's class. Thank you so much, everybody.